We came down here for one project, but the Amazon guy had a different idea. Don't mind the mess. A guy does his best to keep things in order. We're not always successful. Ooh, but not all is clutter. What do we got in here? Oh, gorgeous. A 20-inch Canon carving bar with a quarter tip. Isn't that neat? We'll get more into that one day, but it's real simple. If any of the folks from down south are watching, the Canadian money, our quarter is about the same size as your quarter. So that is a quarter tip carving bar, 20-inch. If there's one thing I can appreciate from shipping and receiving now, is a good packaging job. In fact, this is so good, I'm gonna take a minute just to get it unboxed and then I'll come back to you. I started to cut the box. I've developed a real passion for cardboard boxes, seeing as how we gotta ship stuff all over the place these days. So you don't wanna wreck a good box. This is hopefully an important fixture in, well, our brief forays into homestead and self-sufficiency life here. As you all know, who have watched the channel for a while, or maybe you don't, I grew up on a large cattle ranch. And when you grow up on a large cattle ranch, you don't have to worry about what you're gonna eat. But that doesn't exist anymore in the same fashion. So, a responsible man needs to equip himself to feed himself. Well, I'll tell you what, upon first inspection, it does work. We won't run that too long without any lube in it. Some food grade grease, and then once you get her packed full of meat, Bob is your uncle. So I grew up my whole life with a family that processed their own meat. I mean, you knew where your meat came from right from the moment, like you watched it stop breathing, knew where your meat came from. And what set this in motion? We got a cow 2 years ago. And then in that time since, well, the cattle portion of the farm and the business is gone. And it is now an every man for himself kind of situation. You don't realize how fortunate you are until something isn't how it once was. So yeah, I'm immensely grateful. I really reflect this whole process. That's all I could think about, was how grateful I was to have had access to such quality food from a family farm. And I thought, well, you know, I want to make sure we continue the same quality of food. And I also want to continue, you know, some of that tradition so that my kids have the experience similar to what I did. A couple different grind options here by the looks of it. That one being coarser than that one, so it'll take a little bit of no meat in operation will cause smoking and broken blade. I feel like some of this is translated, so it's a Vivor brand, a Vivor, but it's got some German writing on it, so it can't be all that bad. 1.5 horsepower. I want my kids to experience all the same things that I experienced, more, to a degree, see where their food comes from, and we're very keen on utilizing the whole animal, everything. So if we get the whole animal, we can keep all of the internals, all the trim scraps, everything. We grind that all up into dog food, just the trim scraps, none of the good stuff, that's for me. But the organ meat that we don't consume ourselves, and then all the trimmings and stuff like that. So huge savings in that sense. You get to have the experience. My son, out of the blue, asked me, he says, "Can we save the hide?" And I thought, well, I don't see why we can't. I mean, I've never done it before, and it's probably a heck of an undertaking. So we, down the YouTube rabbit hole, we watched a couple guys doing their thing with tan and hides, and he's pretty jazzed about that. So, you know, even if we don't do the entire thing, there's that part of it, and then we cut and wrap our own meat. So it's an investment. Yes, you can take it somewhere to get done, but costs money too, right? So the upfront investment, plus you know where it comes from. We have space. I have several spaces to do it. Cleanliness being key. So you know, having done it a lot of times in my life, I kind of know what to expect and what to do. So we hooked up with an awesome family farm real close to the neighborhood here. And they're gonna, I think I'll get a new push stick done. This is pretty whimsical, but it's, you know, it does the job, all right? A 2-year-old cow. That's good eating right there. Very fair value, honest folks, and huge plus. I think we're gonna get together and we're gonna do a couple. I'm gonna take mine, and he's doing one for himself, and maybe we'll make a new friend, right? We'll get together, we'll do it together, and then we'll bring the whole shooting match back here and hang it, hang it for a week or so, and then get to, well, making hamburger steaks. But man, what a shiny unit, eh? Like, it's, I don't know, it looks good to me. You don't need a lot of tools. You need a clean space, you need a cool place to hang the meat. Meat grinder, you could buy a meat grinder that big that cranks by hand if you were up to the task. Spruce Stomper, not up to that sort of task. What else did I get? We got some huge cutting mats. I already had all the knives and stuff like that. Being that it was at the family farm, we used to do that. A lot of the tools belonged out there. So I wanted my own. I got a brand new meat saw coming, got the grinder, the meat pad. We always keep, if you don't keep a roll of butcher paper on hand, you should. I mean, even if you're buying meat elsewhere and you're breaking it down and rewrap it, you got to have some butcher paper on hand. And that's really about it. It don't take much more than that, other than a little bit of know-how and shit. If you're not in a hurry, well, like everything these days, you're one YouTube away from being an expert anyway. So we're just gonna watch the Bearded Butcher's hour-long video of the step-by-step breakdown to give me a refresher. We're gonna rock and roll. So anyways, enough of that. That's what was in the box. The old Vivor Silver Bullet. Pretty excited about that. And also lead to other opportunities. We'll buy a sausage horn for that baby. Beautiful. What we came down here to do is I got a little piece of tooling outside the door here that needs to live in the shop. Of course, the old Rode microphone, I had it plugged in, and then it died. Oh, look at that, once again, moist. I'll tell you what, I'm having a hard time not growing feathers. It's so wet. Look at this. This has been around in the background of a video or two before. That is a Lunken Anvil that I saved from a demise of the scrap bin. And I'll tell you why we need it. So what do we need an anvil for? Other than it's just plain old cool. Whoop, almost dropped it. There's a couple tools that we have for assembly that on occasion I could really utilize a hard flat space. I've been using the back of my poor old vise on occasion, but as we get the shop dialed in, this stuff is gonna go away and be more tidied up. Occasionally, a guy's got to peen over maybe a rivet on a replacement chainsaw bar tip. Ultimately, what I'm getting made up or doing is a die for the press that will actually press the rivet in one foul swoop. That's how they're made at the factory, and I would like to replicate that. But be handy for this, handy for, well, come on. You folks watching the channel, you're crafty people. You know exactly what an anvil is useful for. And plus, it's just sitting out there in the weather. It looks lonely. So let's get it in here and get it mounted on, well, chunk of timber, what else? All right, well, first things first, we gotta make a little room and just get things sorted out of the way so you guys can help me pick a spot as to where to put this stuff. Don't want to lose, got important documents here all over the place, full of trade secrets. Oh, it's like a dance hall now, right? Come on, look at this. So back here, in amongst the clutter, we gotta ditch this. We gotta ditch this here, there we go. The tripod's a necessary evil, but sometimes I feel it clips your wings. We got the old Titan grinder mounted. That would have been on the channel a ways back. I'm more or less happy with it. I think I'm gonna unbolt it and I'm gonna get a metal cap to put on top, because over time it's gonna really, it's already doing it, it's gonna just become a dirty spot. You can't clean it down, the grinding dust and all that sort of thing, and I like to keep things tidy. It doesn't look that way at the moment, but trust me, we do try. I want to kind of keep some of that stuff back here, so I want to take and make kind of a bit of a shop corner, and then we're going to run this whole wall here is going to get a bench, you know, standard depth. I don't know what we're going to come out. I like it nice and deep. Maybe we might come out 30 inches or so, but it's going to run full length all the way down to that post there at the end. The only chunk of Douglas fir in the whole building, that one little column there, that was such a horrid tree. And if you haven't watched that, I think there's a playlist, maybe not, of when we built all this in here. Go back and watch, and then you can really get an idea of how much sweat equity went into this endeavor. But that piece of Douglas fir is the only piece in here. Well, that might be the other half of it right there. I think I cut one 4x8. That was the most unruly tree out of the whole batch. I think we snapped 2 blades on the bandsaw. Somebody been hanging birdhouses on it. It was full of hardware. I finally gave up. We firewooded it. So the anvil's quite wide, so I thought, what a better spot to put it than maybe back here, where we got this this plied up post back here. It's a lot wider than the other ones. It's a full 8x8 with a 4x8 screwed to the face of it. If anybody watching here happens to know us from the tool business now, I'm not saying we built it the right way. We built it the way we had material to build it. When you are begging and borrowing trees to cut timber out of, to do what you got to do, well, you don't always get what you want. So that's kind of how she turned out. So I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna mount it there, and I got a chunk of block hiding right there, because every good anvil needs a good base. You just never know what you're gonna find. This was back there buried under some stuff. It's it's part of our inventory, but just carefully, it's in the original package still. Massive circular saw, 16 5/16 of an inch. And anyways, this isn't what comes on the saw. This isn't a carbide blade. It's just a regular old steel blade, but it was in the stuff when we were moving inventory, and I thought, you know, I purposely set it aside, and I thought, you know what, this would be cool. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. Just if an occasion arose where a guy wanted to commemorate something, I thought this would be excellent. I mean, in a pinch, you could cut wood with it, but you know, you'd want to go with the proper carbide blade. A good friend of mine, he is into laser engraving. Opened my eyes to the possibility of laser engraving, and I thought, man, wouldn't that make just a classic plaque? You know, I guess what comes to mind is maybe a clock or something, you know, with something like that. I'm gonna keep that. As us fellas do, eh? You could go into anybody's shop and go, oh, what's that? Oh, I'm just keeping it. Oh, what are you keeping it for? Well, you never know. The answer is always the same. You never know. Jesus, there's tools everywhere. Retractable chinois chalk line pin. If you saw the YouTube short, chalk line pin, not something as common in North America, but you get the idea. Pointy end into the wood, pull the chalk line, no need for the hook, but this one's retractable. Not my favorite, but very popular with the masses. So I think we're gonna put it on this side just because it's a good visual. That's it. I like the look of it. I didn't care about the grinder on the back side of the post because nobody's gonna get too fired up about a grinder, but this way it's out on the front, and we have really good range of motion for long pieces, short pieces. No matter what I'm working on, I got lots of space. Let's cut our piece. We'll get that thing mounted up there, and hopefully stay on task. We're gonna have to take take that outside and square it up a bit. That's definitely, I don't know what that was cut with, a machete at some point, but aesthetically, what do you think? See, I tend to dwell a little bit too much. All wood has so much character. I wouldn't say there isn't such a thing as an ugly piece of wood. Definitely can be, in a spot that is not tasteful, but look at, we got a pretty good chunk of wane on that side, bark sticking on there still. Or do we flip it around like this? Then we got that clean cut, look. I think that's better, right? You got the clean cut. Oh, look, that was meant to be. Look, match. All right, well, I can't think of any more technical way to do this. So if there happens to be a blacksmith watching or something like that, look away. My reasoning is I like to stand up straight. I'm a fairly tall guy, and I don't like to be working like this. So if I were to swing a hammer like that, where's that hammer gonna come flat? Probably not what I'm gonna use the anvil for too much. Just a hard surface to, if you had to bend a piece of metal, but that hammer comes flat, kind of right, like that's a good striking height right there. I kind of want that right there. Match made in heaven. We'll use that little knot right there as a reference because I don't have a pencil on me. 38.5. Well, that rubs me the wrong way because it's not an even number. So if I was, you know what? It does seem awkward. I was going to round that off. To 3 feet. But I'll tell you what, you wouldn't think that would make much of a difference, but that's awkward. 30, I'm going to say 39 is where I want that top of that to be. Yeah. Huh. Does anybody else do that? Leave it in the comments. When you're building stuff that has no set rule, are you inclined to round off to the nearest foot or the nearest 6? I am. I like to round things off. If it's, I'm even inclined to go, well, 39, 40 sounds better, Who am I going to tell that to? No one would ever ask me that. No one would notice. No one would know except for me, but I just can't help it. Inclined to do so. But in this case, I think it would make it uncomfortable. So 30, 39 it is. We'll measure the height of the anvil. And then, hopefully we're clever enough to do some simple subtraction, and then we'll come up with a height to cut that block off. The shop of improvisation, just as we get set up, you know how it is. It's kind of like you moved into your first place and maybe use the same fork every time because you only had one, or maybe your coffee table like me was a Rubbermaid container. You just got it done. But we might not have everything we need, like a set of sawhorses, but the beauty of working down here is that you're never that far away from a tool that you do need. And then, because I don't have to ask permission to anybody but my own self, well, you can just grab one off the shelf and use it because, what's it gonna hurt? So this is already square. We're gonna use this as the bottom. We're gonna use this as the top. It worked out that we need to cut this at 28 inches, which is convenient. That's exactly the length that this flex square goes to. These are made in Germany. They are listed on logbuildingtools.ca. I can do that, and not to give a disclaimer that this is a sponsored ad, because, we happen to own the dang outfit, remember? So, shameless plugs. Go like this. That flex square actually comes with the Alpha protractor for layout. It's just like it sounds. It is a gigantic layout protractor. Is 2 sides enough? I think so. Well, 3rd side doesn't hurt anybody. Well, I have to be 100% transparent with you. My preference is to actually cut this sort of thing with a circular saw because that's more my forte. originally was cut with a circular saw, but one that wasn't big enough to go all the way through, so it's got a weird hump in the middle. Ugh, I like that saw. It's all right. A 291. Do you want to know why I have a 291? I'll tell you what. So the other side of our business, as you know, some construction stuff. And we got to doing a job where a guy needed another saw. I wanted a new saw. I thought reliable, you know what I mean? And we just simply went to the dealer and went like this. Oh, that's my budget right there. How big a saw can I? And that at the time, for the budget of that job, was the saw that did the trick. But it's just, I don't know, turned out to be a good all-around unit. So that's smoothed out. I kind of think that buying chainsaws is this one of those things where unless you literally had one of all the sizes, there'd be some guy that would make a case that you'd have a hard time disagreeing with, you know? Oh, I got this one, but then your buddy's got one size bigger, and you're like, what, does it really make a difference? You're like, oh yeah, I need to tell you, right? And you're like, yeah, maybe it does, eh? But I was at the local dealer just recently, grabbing some parts and stuff, and there was a guy in there, a brand spanking new MS 881. I'll tell you what, whew, buddy, that's a beast. That's a beast. Had a 4-foot bar on it, chainsaw milling, of course. I mean, what else would you be doing with a saw that big? But looked like a good time. Love it when a plan comes together. So what we're gonna do on the bottom of that base, probably unnecessary, I did it on the bottom of all these posts, is on the bottom of these posts that are already in here, there's actually a piece of like UHMW, like high heavy wear plastic you'd see for conveyor belts and stuff, 1/2 inch thick. I just happen to have some of that, so I put a piece of that on the bottom of all these posts. And I thought, if I ever for some reason had to park something in here that was wet, there's no floor drain. I didn't put a floor drain in this shop on purpose. That at least the moisture would have to be a 1/2 inch deep before it would wick up into the wood. Necessary? Who knows? But why stop now? So I don't have any of that plastic left, but what I do have left is the leftover piece of an old Dodge Ram mud flap. You guys would have seen the other half of that mud flap in the video where I picked up my sawmill and dropped off a custom built outhouse. That's where the rest of this mud flap lives, is inside that outhouse. But that's what's left. It's got a weird hole in it. But the idea is that we'll go like this with a couple of scrounged fasteners and a little trimming. We're gonna put that on the bottom, and it'll keep it up out of harm's way. And that's probably all it will do, I guess. That's gonna go there. It's already got a countersunk hole in one spot, and we just need one more. Hand tools, well yeah, it's good to stay grounded, you know? You gotta keep stay humble, use a hand tool once in a while. 95% of what we sell is hand tools. You betcha. Man, I meet interesting folks. I had a guy order some stuff, shipped to Denmark. I talked to a lady, fellow Canadian, here just today. We spent a 1/2 hour on the phone talking about tenon cutters. She's building log framed sofa beds. I thought, man, like, there's no way that you would find these types of folks without being in the business we're in. It's just incredible. The creativity and the passion. I don't mean we discussed tenons. I mean, we like drilled down and had a full bore conversation about it. It was very pleasant. I enjoy all of it. These are nothing fancy. These are just Simpson truss screws or left over from a job. The guy ends up with a lot of onesie twosies and stuff contracting, so use them up. Seems funny, eh? I'll be inch and inch. You want it even. What you're gonna want to use when you're putting in any sort of structural screw or bolt, your oldest, most dilapidated impact. That's what you're gonna need. You definitely don't want a high torque drill or anything like that. My God, I think that thing That thing's had its day. It was supposed to be a spare, but it keeps making its way out of the tool trailer. I ended up adding a piece out the front because, well, it's a lot bigger than I thought. Ideally, a guy would have fired up the mill and cut a brand new block, but time and weather dictate, friends. Time and weather dictate. That thing's super heavy. So what am I getting at here? Let's get a machine to lift it. Let's do that. Well, not too shabby, eh? I did spin it the other way, but oh, the old horn was sticking way out into no man's land, and it's right at the gut stabbing height, so I think it looks good. Broke the edges here a bit. A little bit of mud, eh? But what are you gonna do when you're playing in the dirt? That looks good like that. I might cut this off at some point if I determine that it's too much. But I think a guy would want a spot to kind of rest your gear, maybe, while you're working on stuff. You never know. I think also, maybe a hook, eh, in the future. Guy could just leave a hammer on standby rather than running back and forth to the toolbox. I think it really, I don't know. Like a lot of things in life, eh? Serve some sort of purpose some of the time. And if it doesn't, well, conversational piece. I appreciate you guys sticking with me, watching along. There's gonna be more stuff as we put the shop together, adventures in store, and with any luck, we'll get outdoors.